I'll just continue then with the burst file, the UAS burst file, which is where we're collecting data, momentary data from individuals. So this is ecological momentary assessment. And for those of you who may have never heard about ecological momentary assessment, let me quickly introduce what that is. It's a type of intensive longitudinal assessment to capture what people do and how they feel as they go about their daily lives. So the big difference here is in a regular survey, we may ask a person, how did you feel over the past month or over the past week? And EMA asks, how do you feel in the present moment? So people are prompted several times per day for several days to complete very brief surveys about how they feel in the present moment. It has many advantages, and the three central advantages are, of course, reduction of recall bias, potentially greater ecological validity as people are completing these surveys in their daily lives, as they're going about their daily lives, and you also get very fine-grained data to examine the ups and downs, the ebb and flow of people's experiences in daily life. This is, so since people are not walking around with their computer within their daily lives, they're actually completing these surveys on cell phones. These are two examples of what these questions might look like. Left hand is before the prompt, how happy were you feeling? Using a slider scale from not at all to extreme. On the right hand side, you see a question about the social environment. Before the prompt, who were you interacting with, and then check all that apply. So these are very simple setups. As you can see, the types of EMA questions we administer in the UAS are really generic and designed so that they may be useful for a wide range of researchers. So that includes questions about people's negative affect, multiple questions, positive affect, about how stressed they felt or feel right in the moment, and whether there was something stressful occurring right before the prompt. We ask about pain, fatigue, what people did right before the prompt, where they currently are, and whom they are with. This is a basic setup. These are questions that are very widely used in EMA and hopefully of interest for a variety of research applications. A few words about why the UAS is actually almost ideally suited for implementing EMA research. The typical EMA, there's many EMA studies, but oftentimes they are based on very small convenience samples. As a researcher, you would have limited information from respondents apart from the EMA. You may have a baseline survey that's about it. And then when it comes to conventional panel studies that are not web-based, EMA is of course kind of often difficult to implement there if everything else is interview or in-person interviews or telephone interviews. So we have very nice advantages here. Of course, we have a very large representative panel, and we have the opportunity that, or you have the opportunity to connect the EMA data that we collect with the very rich survey data that we collected from each of the respondents along the way over many, many years. Panelists are also followed over time so that now we can integrate EMA in what's called a measurement burst design, which is a very neat way of combining EMA with a longitudinal design, as the next slide shows. So this is a graphical illustration of an EMA measurement burst design. You see burst 1, 2, 3 on the bottom, which could be longitudinally across multiple months or years. And then at each of those bursts, you have EMA administered over multiple days so that you can simultaneously look at longer term changes. That's a macro perspective. And within day and across day changes within each burst, that's a micro perspective. And you can also look at how the within day or cross day fluctuations and changes themselves change in the long run. So the coupling of macro and micro perspectives. Here's an empirical example of how this could be useful. This is a study by Hua Mak, Diana Wang, and Arthur Stone on momentary social interactions and affect in later life and how they varied from the early to later, or not later, but shortly before to after the lockdown in the COVID-19 pandemic. So in this chart here, you see basically 4 bursts that were conducted in early March, late March, and then May and July of 2020, where the red bar or this red line shows the COVID lockdown that occurred between early and late March. And what's shown here is from people's EMA responses, the amount of time or proportion of time that they said they spend time with their friends. And as you might expect, the number of, or the proportion of time went down from about 10% to 5% from before to after the lockdown. And if we now look at the second graph on the right, you can now couple this information about contextual information or self-reported social information with how people were feeling within the moment that they were completing the prompts. This, for example, shows the people's negative affect ratings when they were with their friends compared to when they were not with their friends. So you see that in early March, when people were not with their friends, they were had higher levels of negative affect compared to when they were with their friends. So friends were good at that point in time, and that kind of changed, as you can see, from before to after the lockdown, where after the lockdown, being with your friends, people had in the moment when they were with their friends, the same or almost higher negative affect levels compared to when they were not with their friends. And that kind of makes intuitive sense because being with friends exposed you to the risk of maybe getting COVID at that time. At least that was a fear that people had. And so negative affect while being with your friends after the lockdown makes complete sense. This is just an illustration of how these bursts can really be useful for understanding both short-term within-person processes and changes in those over time, especially when it comes to changes that occur due to a, say, life event like the COVID onset. And we are actually using this idea in the UAS to understand, or to try to understand how, that's the next slide, how certain life events may impact people's experiences in real life. So what we do, what we call, we administer random bursts and bursts that are triggered by individuals' life events. So this slide shows that a random burst consists of 7 days of 6 times per day EMAs. That's coupled with an end of day EOD assessment at the end of each day. And then at the end of the week, you have a 7-day recall assessment. But we couple that now with what Pancho is going to talk about in a moment, with a monthly event monitoring, where if a person reports a life event that includes retirement, financial setback, serious illness or injury, positive financial change, or a death of a close friend, then shortly after, we would invite them for a triggered burst where they would complete the same 7 days of EMAs, but now you can compare for an individual their experiences before to shortly after the life event, or different people who experienced the life event with those that did not experience the life event. This slide just shows the number of people and observations that we have in the burst data right now. So you have overall about 30,000 random prompts, about 15,000 triggered prompts. So there's a total of 710 participants in the sample. That's of course not by far not covering all of the UAS panelists, but it's comparatively speaking, for EMA data, it's a large data set actually. The compliance rates are comparable to other EMA studies, 75% or higher. Compliance rate here means the proportion of time that a person actually completed the prompts when they were prompted, which is, it's always difficult to obtain 100% of the data here, of course. Where to find it? It's right next to the UAS cognitive comprehensive file and next to the UAS comprehensive file. Thank you so much.